The show is called Lilia Carrillo, Ruptures and Premonitions. The idea rupture, the first reference is to La Ruptura, which means rupture in English. That's a reference to the Ruptura generation of which Lilia Carrillo is identified. And that group of artists, starting in the late 50s, early 60s, they were thinking about existentialism. They were interested in what was going on in New York and Paris and Spain. Lilia being one of them, were very adamant about exploring abstraction as a new language, as a provocative language, as a subjective language. This idea of kind of personal subjectivity, personal expression that they were talking about was very new in that, or it was very counterculture in that moment, starting in the late 50s. The first reference is to a painting in the show called Premonition from 1970, which is the year that she had a spinal aneurysm that paralyzed her, and she had to sort of work her way back through physical therapy to pain again. But she eventually, that aneurysm, complications of that caused her death in 1974. So it's sort of prophetic or eerie or strange that this painting is called Premonition. Again, it's an abstract painting. It has all this kind of white paint on one side. Then it has this sort of stacked colors of blue and red. And there's something about the form of these stacked colors as you look at it further, it starts to feel, perhaps it's referencing like a military tank. And she started showing her work professionally as early as 1956. I chose to focus on the period from 1961 to 1974 when she died. There are 3 paintings in this room that reference the complexity of that year and that cultural moment in Mexico. There's a large painting called Love in Bloom, which is a very large, exuberant painting that has touches of color and clouds and swarming, but it has sort of a positive energy to it and may reference the summer of love, 1968, sort of this time of sexual liberation and, just this feeling of youth and positivity that sort of that part of that year represented. And then there's a third painting in here called Behind the Wall, Atrás del Muro. And all of these paintings are quite abstract, but as you think about the titles and you start to think about the time period and looking at them, this painting in particular is sort of divided by a series of red lines that sort of look like a suture or a barrier, like a wall. And it's sort of a chaotic painting, and you start to maybe see a figure in the painting. Who knows what this wall is, but it seems to evoke the kind of chaotic environment, the tense political environment that she was living in. It is interesting that she was the only woman in the Ruptura, or she was the most prominent woman. I mean, she's the one photographed, and she was the one woman invited with all these men to sort of exhibit together and show internationally together. If you read the press about her work, it really focuses on this authenticity that people saw in the work and this poetic quality of the work. I mean, it's in some ways this exhibition may be seen as sort of counterintuitive in terms of we're living a moment of a lot of return to interest in figuration within painting. There are works that touch on the figure, but they really are celebrating abstraction, pure abstraction, or the idea of abstracting from one's interior psychology, one's dreams, one's emotions through process.